Hi, welcome guys. My name is Paul. Um, yeah, I am a 17-year-old producer slash artist from Nigeria, Abuja, and yeah, I don't know. Today I just want to watch anime for real. I just want to watch anime. I want to just watch it. So yeah, this is how. I'm just joking. This shit is just funny, man. It's funny as hell. No, no, no.
Now, instead of fleeing, they have no choice but to face it head-on. Eulicia lunges forward and strikes the demon with one of the magic crystals, using it as a weapon. While the crystal's power definitely connects, it has no effect, as the demon claims to have infinite health. Allraid refuses to believe that and attempts to slash the demon across the stomach, but it doesn't work either. The wound heals almost instantly, not because the demon actually has infinite health, but because he's using Marlefus mana to regenerate, which is rapidly depleting her energy. The demon informs Allraid and Eulicia that they're quite skilled compared to most humans it has encountered, but in the end, they're no match for its power. The same applies to all their friends battling outside, desperately striving to defend the city, but ultimately destined to perish at the hands of a zombie legion. Allraid declares that none of his men would ever be defeated by some lowly monster, but the demon responds that he can simply keep summoning more until they're eventually overwhelmed. Even the three fighting outside the ruins wouldn't survive the next wave he plans to unleash, but Eulicia and Allraid are determined not to let that happen. The two launch a simultaneous attack. Eulicia slices off the demon's head, while Allraid drives his blade into its heart. Yet the demon picks up his head and continues speaking as if nothing happened. He declares that he's going to slaughter all the knights and then hunt down the princess. But for amusement, he might let Eulicia and Allraid live long enough to watch Lies suffer a slow death. Eulicia refuses to let that happen, but she finds herself at a loss, unsure of what to do next since none of her attacks are effective. Not even Kurt's magic crystals were enough to finish the demon off. Meanwhile, Marlefus has come to terms with her fate, having lost so much strength that even if she were freed from the magic circle, she wouldn't have the energy to escape. On top of that, due to the curse the bishop placed on her, she hasn't eaten in days and is now experiencing the worst hunger she's ever known. She finds herself wishing she could taste Kurt's cooking just once more before dying, and when she starts hearing Kurt's voice, she assumes it's nothing more than her imagination. But suddenly, Kurt emerges from a hole. He and Lies have just made their way into the chamber. Marlefus is amazed to see Kurt here, and even more shocked that he's accompanied by the princess. She assumes Kurt must have uncovered her role in the scheme to assassinate Lies, bringing the princess along to confront her. However, the truth is that Kurt had no idea Marlefus was even there until the moment he arrived. Kurt questions Marlefus, demanding if she's the one behind the attacks on Lies, but Marlefus clarifies that she was cast out by the church and manipulated into this situation by Bishop Tristan. Both Kurt and Lies hear her words, yet they interpret them in entirely different ways. Lies deduces that Tristan must be the mastermind orchestrating all the assassination attempts against her, while Kurt assumes Marlefus has been venting her frustration over her excommunication by scrawling graffiti everywhere. Marlefus doesn't understand what Kurt is talking about, and neither does Lies, but she still backs up everything Kurt says, even if it doesn't make any sense. Kurt then asks Marlefus whether she knows where Eulicia is, but Marlefus has never heard of anyone by that name. However, she does recall spotting two adventurers heading in this direction, so they're probably on the floor just above this one. Kurt thanks her for the directions and gets ready to leave in search of Eulicia, not giving Marlefus a second thought since he assumes the magic circle is nothing more than random graffiti. But Lies then asks him to help clean up the magic circle while she goes to look for Eulicia herself. Kurt tries to stop her, worried it's too risky for her to head out alone, but she quickly reminds him that he gave her a magic sword, so she'll be perfectly fine on her own. Kurt finally agrees to let her leave, and during Liza's absence, he somehow locates a bucket and mop, preparing to begin cleaning. Marlefus considers him mad, as it's unthinkable to erase a magic circle with ordinary mop water, but Kurt's too stubborn to grasp the concept of impossible, so he nonchalantly sweeps the magic circle away. The moment the magic circle shatters, the demon senses his mana source has been disconnected. Now unable to sustain further damage, he swiftly evades Ulyssia and Allraid's strikes, though neither of them understands the exact reason. The demon's sudden dodging makes one thing clear: he's afraid of taking hits now. Ulyssia grabs the final magic crystal from her bag, ready to finish off the demon once and for all, but before she can activate it, the demon smacks it from her grip. Now, without that crucial crystal, their odds of victory look dangerously low. Just as the demon prepares to unleash its full strength, Lies suddenly appears, shouting Ulyssia's name. Lies has been the demon's main target from the very start, so the moment it sees her, it stabs her to death and laughs at how foolish she was to come here all alone. But to its shock, Lies's body suddenly dissolves into a swarm of butterflies, revealing that it was only a clone. The demon is in disbelief, certain it had struck down the real Lies, but it turns out that what it stabbed was merely an illusion summoned by the sword. Just as its name suggests, the sword creates illusions capable of fooling anyone, sometimes showing a chaotic mess of nonsense, and in this case, a flawless replica of Lies. The demon keeps trying to kill Lies again and again, but each time it lands a blow, it ends up being another illusion. Meanwhile, while the demon is distracted by all the fakes, the real Lies successfully slips past and reaches the magic crystal that Ulyssia had dropped. She then smashes it, and the resulting burst of energy wipes the demon out. And since the demon was the one who summoned all the zombies, now that he's gone, all the monsters vanish as well. The crisis is finally over, and everyone in the city can rest easy knowing that they are safe. Ulyssia is furious with Lies for risking herself like that. Lies says sorry for arriving without permission, but she couldn't just keep hiding while others were risking their lives to protect her. Even though Ulyssia is still upset, she knows she doesn't have the right to stay angry. After all, if Lies hadn't appeared, the demon would have ended both her and Allraid. Allraid wants to personally thank Lies for saving him, but she tells him it's not necessary because he fought even harder than she did. She thanks him for all his hard work in defending the city and promises to give him a reward for his brave actions. Meanwhile, Kurt has just managed to erase the last remnants of the magic circle, but even with it gone, Marlephis' curse still stops her from eating anything, meaning she'll eventually starve. Right then, Kurt hands her some rice balls, sensing her hunger. Marlephis is grateful for the kindness, but if she tries to eat them, the curse will just make her throw it all back up. Nevertheless, she chooses to eat it anyway, wanting to enjoy the flavor of Kurt's cooking one final time before her death. Yet, as she takes a bite, she discovers she can eat it without issue, and moments later, the curse afflicting her stomach vanishes. It's not hard to deduce that Kurt's food is what healed her, but this marks the first moment Marlephis truly grasps the extent of Kurt's exceptional abilities. Now, she looks back on everything Kurt did for her and the rest of Flaming Dragon, and it finally hits her. Their party was only strong because Kurt was the one holding them together, so she genuinely apologizes for how she treated him. Marlephis is still awful, but at least she recognizes Kurt's strength now, and that's gotta mean something, though it doesn't stop her from being arrested, since two of Mimico's agents arrive to take Marlephis into custody for her involvement in the assassination attempt. Marlephis calls out to Kurt for help, but he simply promises to visit her in jail as often as she likes. Once Marlephis is taken away, Lies approaches Kurt to check if he's okay. Kurt says he's doing great, and if anything, he's more concerned about Ulyssia and the others who were fighting, but Lies reassures him they're all right thanks to the medicinal soup he prepared for them. After everyone makes it back from the battlefield, Kurt welcomes them to a grand feast at the mansion. However, once they all settle down to eat, the soldiers remain quiet, silently devouring their food. Kurt is concerned that the soldiers are only eating out of courtesy, as they don't appear to be enjoying themselves in the slightest, but Allraid tells him he's completely mistaken. The reason everyone is so quiet is because the food is the most delicious thing they've ever had, and they're too busy trying to eat as much of it as they possibly can. Kurt feels happy knowing that they're enjoying his cooking, and while the others continue devouring their meals, Lies calls Allraid over so she can introduce him to Kurt. Kurt remembers him as the foreman who oversaw the city wall repairs, but Lies quickly explains that Allraid's responsibilities go far beyond beyond construction. He's actually the one governing the entire city and its citizens. Suddenly, a burst of fireworks lights up the sky, leaving the whole crowd in awe of the breathtaking display. Kurt mentions he figured some entertainment would pair nicely with the meal, which is why he set up these fireworks ahead of time. As for the meal itself, Allraid points out how all his wounds mysteriously healed after eating. But Kurt doesn't see why that's surprising. Back in his village, it was completely normal for someone to recover just by having a tasty meal, and they can't believe what they just heard. In a flashback to Kurt's younger years, when he lived in his hometown known as Haste Village, he walks up to Hildegard, who is occupied with her own affairs. Kurt inquires if she happens to be the daughter of the traveling merchant. At first, Hildegard pays no attention to Kurt, but as he persists, doing his utmost to get her attention, she eventually responds, explaining that her father has prohibited her from speaking to anyone from this village. It seems Hildegard's father believes the villagers here are strange, and if Hildegard spends time with them, she might pick up some of their oddness. Either way, Hildegard firmly tells Kurt that she's only talking to herself, and Kurt, going along with it, responds that he's also just talking to himself. That's how they introduce themselves, and before long, the two of them strike up a friendship. Soon after, Kurt takes Hildegard on a trip to the mountains riding his iron golem, aiming to show her some rainbow-colored flowers. Along the way, Hildegard spots some berries that look delicious, and she decides to eat some, only to discover that they're extremely poisonous. Luckily to her, even at such a young age, Kurt knows how to create an antidote. Acting fast, he gathers the rainbow-colored flowers, grinds them into a paste, mixes it with water, and places the mixture in his own mouth. But just before he can give the antidote to Hildegard, Kurt wakes up. He recalls that this incident took place 10 years ago. Now, he and his adventurer group are traveling to a village that has requested their assistance. Upon arrival, the village chief explains their issue. An unexpected drought has completely dried up their river. With no water, their crops are withering away. However, Ulycia remains unconcerned. Looking closer at the map's details, she spots a huge reservoir in a neighboring village and notes that its waterways are linked to this village. However, as the village chief explains, the real issue lies with the neighboring village leader, who refuses to share the water, despite multiple attempts at negotiation. That's precisely why the chief has turned to the Aetlir for help, trusting in their influence and reputation to persuade the stubborn village head to cooperate and release the much-needed water. Once Ulycia hears the village chief's explanation, she heads back to where her group was stationed, only to find Danzo waiting there. He tells her that the others have already gone up the hill. Apparently, the elderly bird keeper has hurt his back, and they've asked Kurt to assist him. Ulycia figures they can manage that situation just fine, so without delay, she mounts her horse and sets off for the neighboring village, determined to negotiate for the water they desperately need. But upon her arrival, a woman drops to her knees and pleads with Ulycia to assist their village with the water supply too. Ulycia is confused by the situation and realizes that at this point, all she can do is hope for rain. Right then, two villagers rush over in a panic and try to inform Ulycia about something occurring at the top of the hill. Though they struggle to put what they witnessed into words, Ulycia hurries to the spot and finds Cans and Sina gazing in awe at a massive lake. She's puzzled. If a lake this size existed here, why would the villagers report a water shortage? Sina can't really describe what just happened, so she simply tells Ulycia that this lake wasn't here mere moments ago. As Kurt comes running toward them, Ulycia begins to piece together what likely happened. She questions Kurt about why he's here, since Danzo had told her he was supposed to be looking after the birds. Kurt then explains that he noticed the old man's birds were desperately parched, so he rushed here and drew water up from an underground aquifer. Not long after, both village leaders arrive, expressing their gratitude to Ulycia for rescuing them from disaster. Kurt, too, look at her in admiration, convinced she miraculously fixed everything within minutes, completely oblivious to the fact that he was the one who accidentally ended the crisis. With the mission complete, the group is now heading back, having been given several eggs as a token of gratitude. Kurt mentions that he's planning to use the eggs to cook something tasty later on. He then asks about Lies, and Ulycia explains that Lies went to meet with the Lord of Tikkon to deliver a report regarding the monster attack from the other day. Later that day, Lies and Allraid are engaged engaged in a conversation with Mangrave Tikhon. It seems that the Mangrave holds a rank comparable to that of a duke, and in an effort to strengthen his power, he's attempting to gain Lys's favor. Although Lys sees right through the Mangrave's intentions, she maintains a pleasant smile, reminding herself that she's here as the representative of the Aetlier Master, not as the kingdom's princess. The Mangrave attempts to gather information about the Aetlier Meister, aware that he was the one responsible for saving the town from the undead monster assault. However, Lys skillfully avoids his question, determined to keep Kurt from being dragged into political games. As their discussion continues, the Mangrave changes the subject to the town where the Aetlier Master resides, noting that the place still hasn't been given a name. Lys explains that in order for a town to receive an official name, the kingdom must first assign a viceroy. Since the Mangrave holds the power to appoint viceroys within his territory, he subtly hints at his plan to name the Aetlier Meister as the viceroy of the town. Lys instantly sees through his true motive, to bring Kurt under his personal authority. However, since Kurt isn't even aware yet that he's the Aetlier Meister, Lys can't let this happen. Because of that, she explains to the Mangrave that a decision this significant can't be made by her alone. The Mangrave find this suspicious, especially considering she's not just the princess, but also the Aetlier's official representative. He remarks that he had assumed she would have at least some level of authority in matters like this. Lys is completely taken by surprise. She doesn't know how to respond and grows even more uneasy when the Mangrave shifts his attention to Allraid. The Mangrave then asks Allraid, who serves as the general of the town's knights, whether he has any objections to appointing the Aetlier Meister as the viceroy. Lys can only hope he refuses, which would also confirm that Allraid is unaware of Kurt's true circumstances. So Allraid ends up agreeing to the proposal. Lys quickly steps in once more with another objection. This causes the Mangrave to ask if there's some kind of hidden flaw or defect that would make the Aetlier Meister unsuitable for the position. The remark deeply offends Lys, and unable to restrain herself, she declares that no one in the entire nation is more gifted than the Aetlier Meister. She ends up praising Kurt a little too much, which gives the Mangrave exactly the confirmation he was looking for. He confidently announces that the Aetlier Meister will, without a doubt, be appointed as the viceroy. Later that day, Lys comes back to the mansion with the news. Ulycia is worried that they might be forced to present Kurt to everyone as the Aetlier Master, which would be a problem since he himself doesn't even know he is the Aetlier Master. She proposes finding someone else to pose as the Aetlier Master just to settle the matter quickly. But that wouldn't work either, because all the knights have already met Kurt and know who he really is. So who would believe them if they brought in a replacement who's clearly not as skilled or powerful as he is? At first, Lys agrees to Ulycia's suggestion, but upon realizing it involves selecting someone else to impersonate Kurt, he shouts that it's unacceptable. No one else in that world could ever be like Kurt. She demands to know Kurt's whereabouts, and Ulycia explains that Kurt is currently busy with child rearing. The moment Lys hears this, she freaks out. If the child isn't hers, she declares she'll adopt it and raise it alongside her beloved Kurt. Ulycia is only joking with her. Kurt doesn't actually have a child, but he is caring for the egg they received as a gift from the village they visited, with the egg about to hatch at any moment, and knowing how Kurt always manages to surprise them, Ulycia can't help but wonder just what kind of creature will emerge from this egg in the end. Right at that moment, Kurt shouts for Ulycia, announcing that the egg has just hatched. Meanwhile, Mimiko is fed up with handling the numerous reports piled on her desk. She grumbles about it to Ophelia, who remarks that Mimiko's mask seems on the verge of slipping off. Discussing the workload on her desk, Ophelia informs her that Bishop Tristan has been murdered and his body was discovered. She proposes that the Poland church had him killed, needing someone to blame for the botched attempt at summoning the demon lord. Then, turning to Mimiko, Ophelia asks what she intends to do about Marlefus, whether she wants to kill her. As much as Mimiko might desire revenge, she remembers Kurt's words that he had promised to visit Marlefus in prison. With that in mind, killing her now might not be a good idea. At that moment, Mimiko receives a letter. It looks like she's just gotten some bad news. Meanwhile, back with Kurt, the egg has hatched into a little girl. Both Ulycia and Lys are confused that the egg's hatchling has somehow become Kurt's daughter. Not long after, Ulycia gathers everyone for a meeting, and the girl is sitting on Kurt's lap, calling him Papa. Even though she just hatched, she appears to be around 3 years old.